Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Trevor returned to his quiet plot of land, he expected peace, not a locked gate, a bold no trespassing sign, and a ruthless HOA president claiming it wasn't his. What followed was a battle of lies, power, and one man's fight to reclaim what was rightfully his. It had been a long year. Between managing multiple construction projects across the state and dealing with two back-to-back permit nightmares, I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about the slice of peace I'd bought for myself a year ago. But finally, after months of spreadsheets, site inspections, and missed dinners, my calendar had cleared just enough to allow one indulgence, returning to that beautiful empty lot I'd purchased in Pine Valley. It wasn't much, just a patch of cleared land on a gentle hill, surrounded by pines and humming with possibility, but it was mine. The plan had always been to build a quiet summer home there, something modest but sturdy, a personal retreat. And today was the day I'd finally take the first real step toward that dream. I drove up with the windows down, the warm breeze cutting through the cabin of my pickup. As I turned onto the gravel road leading to my lot, I felt a flicker of excitement. It had been too long. I hadn't been out here since the closing, back when the grass was waist-high and the for sale sign still hung askew on the rusted gatepost. But as the trees parted and my property came into view, the excitement turned instantly into confusion, then disbelief. The lot was fenced. A brand new metal fence, black, modern, industrial, ran the perimeter of the property. A locked gate barred the driveway, and bolted onto it was a professionally printed sign that made my stomach drop. Private property, no trespassing, owned by HOA of Pine Valley. What the hell? I parked off the road, grabbed my folder with the deed, still tucked behind the passenger seat, and walked up to the gate. Through the bars, I could see that the lot had been cleared recently. The weeds were gone, replaced by clean gravel. A temporary construction trailer sat in the corner, and I could see the tail end of a bright orange cable snaking into the ground, as if someone had already applied for power. I checked the deed again, my name, my purchase date, everything airtight. No easements, no transfers, no liens. I owned this land fair and square. So why the hell was there a fence around it? And who the hell gave Pine Valley HOA the right to claim it? A voice startled me from the side. Some guy in a neon yellow vest, walking briskly from the far end of the property with a clipboard under his arm. "Hey, you can't be here," he barked without even asking who I was. I held up the deed. "I'm the owner of this lot. Just came to check on it." He didn't even look. "This is HOA jurisdiction. You need to leave." I frowned. That's not how property ownership works. The guy gave me a stiff shrug, like he'd said it a dozen times already. "If you got a problem, take it up with the office. I'm just here to document pre-inspection conditions." He turned on his heel and walked off toward the trailer. I stood there a moment longer, processing. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Someone had taken deliberate steps to fence, clear, and reassign my land. And judging by that sign, they weren't shy about it either. I got back in the truck and drove off. Not with anger exactly, but with that electric chill you get when you realize something's seriously wrong, and someone's banking on you being too busy or too polite to fight back. They didn't know me very well. The HOA office looked exactly like I imagined it would, sterile, over-air-conditioned, and pretending to be far more important than it was. Faux marble floors, a receptionist who looked both exhausted and aggressively neutral, and a framed poster on the wall that read, "Pine Valley, where community comes first." It felt less like a homeowners association and more like a low-budget cult, with better lawn care. I gave my name and explained why I was there. The receptionist glanced at her screen and offered a practice smile. "Ms. Miller will see you now. Second door on the left." I stepped into a small, too-bright office that smelled faintly of vanilla and ink toner. Behind the desk sat a woman in her early 50s, sharp features, neatly pressed blazer, and a smile so rehearsed it could have been preloaded onto her face. She stood and extended a hand. "Trevor, right? Karen Miller. I'm the president of the Pine Valley HOA. I've been expecting you." "Yeah, I imagine you have," I said, shaking her hand and resisting the urge to grip harder than necessary. "We've got a bit of a situation. My property." "Ah, yes," she cut in smoothly, waving a manicured hand. "The lot on Aspen Ridge Drive. Lovely piece of land, or at least it was, before it sat neglected for nearly a year." I narrowed my eyes. It wasn't neglected. I bought it fair and square. I've got the deed, the title, everything. I just haven't started building yet. She leaned back in her chair like she was dealing with a confused child. Mr. Scott, I'm sure you believe that. But here's the issue. That lot was zoned for potential community development under the HOA's long-term improvement plan. When no activity happened for months and we received no contact from any owner, we took steps to secure it for the benefit of the neighborhood. I blinked. You secured my property? Karen nodded, proud of herself. We filed a development claim. There were concerns about blight, safety, and liability, so we moved forward with fencing and cleanup. We've submitted an application to repurpose the land into a shared recreation space, a community garden, maybe a small dog park. It's really for the greater good. I stared at her in stunned silence for a few beats. That land is mine. Her smile didn't waver. That's your assertion. But unfortunately, your so-called ownership is under review. You see, we've acquired a document dated years ago, suggesting the property was sold under a different agreement. A transaction involving, I believe, your late uncle. My uncle never owned that property, I said flatly, and I have the official records to prove it. Karen shrugged, as if facts were optional. Then I'm sure you'll have no trouble clearing it up. But in the meantime, I suggest you stop attempting to enter the property. If you keep trespassing, we'll be forced to press charges. My jaw clenched. You can't just fabricate ownership and threaten legal action. This is theft. Karen's tone turned icy. Mr. Scott, I would strongly advise you to reconsider your position. We don't want this to escalate. The board and I are willing to offer you a resolution. If you sign over the land, we can avoid a lengthy and unpleasant process. I laughed once. You want me to hand over my property to you? For free. She gave a small, diplomatic nod. For the community. I stood. No deal. As I walked out, I caught the receptionist glancing up from her desk, eyes wide for just a second, like maybe this wasn't the first time someone had walked out of Karen's office pissed off. Out in the parking lot, I slammed the door shut on my truck and sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. HOA politics were one thing, but this wasn't some fence height dispute. This was a coordinated move to steal my land, and I had no intention of letting them get away with it. The first thing I did after leaving that HOA office was call Adam Heller, my attorney. Adam wasn't just a good lawyer, he was a relentless bastard when someone tried to mess with property rights. We'd gone to college together, and I knew he was the kind of guy who treated legal disputes like chess matches he fully intended to win in under 10 moves. Within a few hours, I was sitting in his office with the deed, the title, and every scrap of documentation I had on the lot. Adam leaned back in his chair, flipping through the papers. Yeah, this is clean. Purchase is solid, title transfer is clear, no encumbrances, and your payment trail is tight. If they're trying to claim this land, they're bluffing hard. She said they had some kind of old agreement involving my uncle. Adam rolled his eyes. Of course she did. Ghost agreements with dead relatives, classic HOA maneuver when they can't get what they want legally. He started typing rapidly on his laptop. First, we'll file a formal notice with the county recorder's office that there's an active dispute on your parcel. It's not required, but it keeps the paper trail nice and loud. Second, I'm sending a cease and desist to the HOA for unlawful occupation and property misrepresentation. And third, he paused and grinned. We dig. Over the next 2 days, Adam pulled property transfer logs, county zoning requests, and all HOA submissions from the last 12 months. And, sure enough, it didn't take long to hit gold. 3 months earlier, Pine Valley HOA had submitted a request to have my parcel redesignated as common space under their jurisdiction, complete with a development plan and a bullshit community approval vote that, according to the minutes, had passed. Unanimously. The problem, the county had denied the request. They were told no, Adam said, highlighting the stamped response, and moved forward anyway. But it got better. A construction permit had been filed for temporary staging on a parcel under community control. The listed applicant, Pine Valley HOA President Karen Miller. And get this, Adam added, pulling up a digital scan. She used her personal email and listed herself as the contact for access authorization. She's not just playing dirty, she's being sloppy. I decided to go back to the lot the next day. I had every legal right to step on my land, and I damn well planned to do it. But as I pulled up and parked along the gravel edge, I saw 2 men in blue HOA volunteer vests standing on the other side of the fence, arms crossed. I stepped out of my truck with the folder in hand. One of them immediately raised a phone and started filming. "You're trespassing," the shorter one said. "No," I said calmly, holding up the papers. "I own this land. These are the documents. I'm not here to start a fight, just to inspect what's been done." The taller one reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Lot 4 perimeter. He's back." "Send security." Within 10 minutes, a sheriff's deputy showed up, young, polite, and clearly annoyed at having to referee a land dispute. I handed him my documents. He reviewed them, nodded, then turned to the volunteers. "He's not trespassing. Far as I can tell, this is his land." But they insisted I leave anyway, saying the matter was under HOA review and that I was escalating tensions. The deputy gave me a sympathetic shrug. "Look, I'm not here to make legal determinations. If they call us, we respond, but I'd recommend you take this up through the courts." "I already am," I said, and with that, I got back in my truck and drove off, more determined than ever. I didn't even make it 2 days before the storm hit. It started with a flyer. Someone had left it folded under my windshield wiper, probably during the night. Glossy paper, full color, real effort went into it. Across the top in bold red letters, "Warning, fraudulent land claim in our community." Beneath that was a blurry satellite image of my lot, a headshot of me pulled from my LinkedIn, and a long, rambling message signed, "Concerned Residents of Pine Valley." Apparently, I was now the neighborhood villain. According to the flyer, I was a speculator who had forged documents to steal land meant for community development. It warned that I had threatened volunteers and even hinted I had a criminal record for property disputes. That last part was complete fiction, of course, but truth wasn't the point. Smear campaigns never need facts, just a mailing list. The next day, I found the same flyer in 3 of my neighbors' mailboxes. One of them, an older guy named Stan, who used to wave at me every Sunday morning, wouldn't even meet my eye when I pulled into my driveway. Another neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, took a wide detour around me while walking her Pomeranian as if I was leaking radiation. By the end of the week, it wasn't just flyers. Posts started popping up on the Pine Valley Neighborhood Facebook group. Someone posted an old Google Street View screenshot of my property pre-fence and wrote, "This land was always public. I've walked my dogs here for years." The comments were a toxic mess of misinformed support. "Looks like this guy is trying to screw over the HOA. Typical developer trash. Another outsider trying to destroy our neighborhood. Should have built a park already instead of letting it rot." I tried commenting once, just once. I posted a polite message clarifying that I was the legal owner, provided the parcel number, and even offered to show documents to anyone who wanted proof. It got flagged for harassment within 10 minutes and deleted. My account was muted for community disruption. Then came the in-person visit. Saturday morning, I was scraping paint off my front porch when I heard chanting. I thought it was kids at first, until I saw a crowd coming up the street. A dozen people, maybe more, with cardboard signs reading things like "Community over corporations" and "Land for locals." At the front was Karen herself, smug and perfectly composed, holding a megaphone like she was organizing a peace rally instead of leading a mob. I walked to the end of my driveway. "You've got some nerve," I said. She smiled like a politician mid-debate. "We're here to raise awareness, Trevor. The neighborhood deserves the truth." The truth? I held up my phone. "Because I've got the deed. The title. All of it. You're spreading lies and you know it." Karen's voice went flat. "You've made this a legal matter, so we'll treat it as such. But in the meantime, the residents have a right to protest against bad actors in their community." One of the protesters threw an egg. It missed, but barely. I called the police, not to have them arrested, just to document the harassment. The officer took statements, warned the crowd to stay off my property, and left. No one got charged. That night, my inbox exploded. "Go back where you came from. You're the reason neighborhoods die. Hope someone burns your fake deed. Fraud." I forwarded the worst messages to Adam and changed all my passwords just to be safe. We both knew what this was now. A coordinated pressure campaign. Karen wanted me to feel alone, overwhelmed, and forced to back down. She had no idea how long I could hold a grudge. There's a specific kind of rage that burns cold, measured, focused, and surgical. That's what I felt after the protest. I wasn't going to yell or throw punches or stoop to Karen's level. No, I was going to do what I do best, build. But this time, not with bricks and mortar, with facts, leverage, and evidence. Adam and I met the next morning. He'd already filed a formal complaint with the county zoning board, and now he was preparing a civil suit against both the HOA and Karen personally for defamation, illegal occupation, and attempted fraudulent conveyance. "What we need," he said, pouring a fourth cup of black coffee, "is undeniable camera-ready proof that this isn't just HOA overreach. It's personal corruption. If she's monetizing this somehow, we nail her." That was my cue. I'd gotten permission from the owner of the adjacent parcel, a retired dentist named Paul who couldn't stand the HOA, to mount a surveillance camera on the edge of his roofline. Discreet, motion-activated, wide field of view. Took me half a day, but by evening, it was up and running. And oh, did it deliver. On day 3, the camera caught Karen walking the site with 2 construction workers. She was in full project manager mode, pointing, gesturing, even unfolding a laminated layout plan. At one point, she looked directly at the worker and said, "I don't care what it was zoned as. This land is ours now." That guy's bluffing. Then she motioned to the temporary trailer, my trailer, the one I'd placed before this whole circus started. "That junk needs to go. Make it disappear. If it's still here by next week, it'll be on your payroll." That alone would have been good, but it got better. The next afternoon, my camera recorded the arrival of a dark blue pickup. No logos, no markings. A man got out, unlocked the gate with a key, and unloaded building supplies. I traced the truck's plates through a contact Adam had at the DMV. It was registered to Eastmark Contracting, a small, family-run construction outfit owned by none other than Eli Miller, Karen's brother. I nearly laughed. It was so on the nose it could have been a TV pilot. Adam filed an emergency discovery motion and subpoenaed Karen's financial records. While we waited, we dug through county payment ledgers, campaign contributions, business filings, anything we could get our hands on. And, wouldn't you know it? 2 weeks earlier, Pine Valley HOA had issued a payment, nearly $18,000, for site preparation and access development. The check had been deposited into an account listed under Eli's business, but the routing number traced to a joint account he shared with Karen. It was game over, at least from a legal standpoint. We packaged the footage, payment trails, contractor records, and permit applications into a tidy PDF, dropped it onto a flash drive, and delivered it directly to the county prosecutor's office. Adam also sent a copy to the sheriff's department. Karen had gone from passive-aggressive to criminal, and now she was finally on record. I got the call at 9:12 a.m. on a Wednesday. "Mr. Scott, this is Detective Harris with the County Sheriff's Office. We've reviewed the material your attorney submitted, and we'd like to ask you a few follow-up questions." I didn't even try to play it cool. "I'll be there in 20. By the time I arrived at the station, Adam had already emailed them a summary breakdown of the financial trail, property filings, and video footage. What I didn't expect was how seriously they were taking it. Harris had a case folder thicker than my building permit files and a whiteboard already half filled with arrows connecting names: Karen Miller, Eli Miller, Pine Valley HOA, Eastmark Contracting, and my name, right in the center. "This isn't just some HOA turf war," Harris said after a long pause. "You've got misuse of HOA funds, false filings with the county, and likely criminal conspiracy to commit property fraud. And if your surveillance footage holds up, we may be looking at coercion and attempted theft." He asked me to walk him through the timeline from the moment I discovered the fence to the day we handed in the flash drive. I gave him everything. Every phone call, every threat, every flyer and protest. I even showed him the HOA newsletter where Karen claimed the lot had been returned to community use thanks to local initiative. Harris scribbled something, muttered ballsy, and shook his head. By the end of the meeting, he'd already requested access to the HOA's financial records and issued a formal notice to interview all board members. Within 48 hours, things started to crack. The county zoning department confirmed that no valid permits had been issued under HOA authority for work on my lot. The community vote Karen claimed had never happened, at least not with any official record or majority. And 2 of the HOA board members quietly came forward to the sheriff's office, saying they'd been pressured by Karen into signing blank authorization forms. Then came the first real break. One of the construction workers caught on my camera, Jose Martinez, was interviewed by police. He told them Karen assured them the land was under HOA control and that some guy was trying to claim it fraudulently, so they were told to get in quick and start prepping before he lawyers up. And then he handed them a copy of the same laminated plan Karen had shown on site. At that point, Detective Harris had what he needed to request a warrant. The next Monday morning, Pine Valley HOA's office was formally sealed for investigation. Officers served a search warrant and removed boxes of documents, external hard drives, and laptops. Witnesses said Karen showed up during the raid, tried to talk her way past the deputy on the door, and ended up shouting something about community rights before speeding off in her Lexus. By that afternoon, the sheriff's department had placed warning tape across the fence on my property and declared the area under legal hold. Finally, for the first time in months, no one from HOA so much as looked in my direction. But the damage was already done. Emails poured into Adam's inbox from local reporters. Neighbors stopped me on the sidewalk, some to apologize, some to ask what the hell was really going on. The HOA's internal group chat leaked, revealing board members freaking out over possible indictments. Karen, for her part, went silent. No more flyers, no protests, no Facebook tirades, just the sound of a sinking ship. And I had front row seats. The moment the search warrant hit the HOA office, Adam and I filed the civil suit. It was a surgical strike, detailed, aggressive, and backed by enough evidence to make even the boldest HOA president sweat through her blouse. The complaint named Pine Valley HOA and Karen Miller directly, listing charges of unlawful land seizure, defamation, interference with property rights, and emotional distress. We were asking for $85,000 in damages, covering everything from legal fees to lost time and the remediation costs of the mess they'd made on my land. Normally, these things take weeks to move forward. Not this time. The judge fast-tracked the hearing due to the active criminal investigation. Karen's lawyer tried to delay it, citing ongoing confusion over property ownership. Adam shut that down with a smirk and about 40 pages of paperwork. Meanwhile, something changed at the HOA. I started noticing unfamiliar faces at the mailbox cluster, whispering to each other. HOA board members were seen leaving meetings early, looking pale. Then, someone slipped an anonymous envelope under my front door. Inside, a printed email thread from the HOA's internal communications. It showed Karen ordering the use of HOA reserve funds without a vote to pay Eli's contracting company under the guise of expedited site security. Adam was practically giddy. This is breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. They're going to cannibalize each other, trying to escape liability. We sent a subpoena for HOA meeting minutes and internal financial audits. Within days, 2 board members resigned for personal reasons. One of them, I later heard, turned state witness in the ongoing criminal case. Then Karen reached out. Well, not directly. Her attorney did. They requested a private mediation meeting, offered to resolve the matter amicably, promised a generous settlement if I agreed not to go to trial, and signed a non-disclosure agreement. Adam let out a long whistle after reading the letter. Translation: she's scared. I declined. I didn't want her money. I wanted the record. In the lead up to the court date, more residents started approaching me, not with signs or accusations, but with apologies. One older woman handed me a homemade pie and said, "I'm sorry I believed her." We all did. She sounded so sure. It wasn't about being right anymore. It was about making sure no one like her ever tried this again. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No grand oak benches or dramatic lighting. Just beige walls, stiff chairs, and a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. But I didn't care. This was it. The finish line. I'd spent months fighting for what was already mine, and now the people who tried to steal it were going to have to explain themselves under oath. Karen sat at the defendant's table in a slate gray suit, looking every bit the part of a corporate professional. The only problem? The mask didn't quite fit anymore. Her posture was rigid, and for the first time, she wasn't smiling. Her lawyer looked even worse. Bags under his eyes, stacks of crumpled notes, and a folder so bloated it looked like it might explode from guilt. Adam started strong. He laid out the timeline of my ownership, the county records, the denied permit applications, and the documented harassment campaign. Then came the good stuff. He rolled out the video footage, Karen on site barking orders, calling my trailer junk, and instructing workers to remove it. He introduced the financial trail, showing HOA funds routed through Eli Miller's company straight into a shared personal account. He dropped emails, internal memos, and even text messages subpoenaed from Karen's phone that included phrases like, "He'll give up when the neighbors turn on him," and "If the sheriff gets nosy, we play dumb." Karen's defense tried to spin it. They claimed she believed the land was abandoned, that she was acting in the best interests of the community. They pointed to the flyers, the Facebook posts, the so-called support from local residents, but the judge wasn't buying it. When cross-examination began, Adam asked just one question that cracked everything open. Ms. Miller, who approved the payment to Eastmark Contracting? There was a long pause. Karen glanced at her attorney, then back at Adam. It was an executive decision within my authority. And who owns Eastmark Contracting? Her voice dropped. My brother. And were those payments disclosed to the board? They were necessary. The judge stopped the exchange and asked Karen directly, did you disclose any financial conflict of interest with Eastmark Contracting to your board or to the HOA members? Karen hesitated again. No, Your Honor. That was it. The judge recessed for lunch, and when we returned, she didn't waste time. The court finds that the plaintiff, Mr. Scott, is the sole legal owner of the parcel in question. Pine Valley HOA and its acting president, Ms. Karen Miller, are found to have knowingly and unlawfully occupied and misrepresented ownership of the property. Furthermore, the court recognizes evidence of financial misconduct and refers the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. She banged the gavel. The HOA is ordered to pay the plaintiff $85,000 in damages. Court is adjourned. Karen barely stood up before two plainclothes deputies approached her. Ms. Miller, one said quietly, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and unlawful misappropriation of funds. The room froze. I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer. I just stood there, watching as the woman who tried to bulldoze me with a smile and a clipboard got cuffed in front of a dozen shocked residents and the entire HOA legal team. As they let her out, she turned to me and said, this wasn't supposed to happen. I met her eyes and replied, no, it wasn't. It was quiet. For the first time in months, truly, blissfully quiet. No flyers on my windshield, no angry Facebook rants. No HOA volunteers filming me from across the street, just the sound of birds, the wind through pine trees, and the low hum of my coffee machine kicking to life while I stared out the kitchen window at the patch of land that had caused so much chaos. My land, officially, legally, and indisputably mine. Word of the court verdict had spread fast. The HOA held an emergency board meeting 3 days after the trial. It didn't go well for them. With Karen in custody and two former board members already cooperating with investigators, the remaining officers scrambled to distance themselves. Some resigned outright. Others voted to freeze all discretionary spending and suspend all projects until a full audit could be completed. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't need to be. Half the neighborhood was suddenly eager to keep me in the loop. One guy even slipped me the meeting minutes accidentally in my mailbox. It was a full-blown meltdown. Then came the apologies. Stan, the same neighbor who had once avoided eye contact, showed up at my door with a six-pack and a sheepish grin. Didn't realize she was that far gone, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. We just figured you were one of those developers trying to build a 4-story duplex or something. Mrs. Holloway brought cookies. Some teenagers from the Facebook group knocked on my door to say sorry on behalf of our parents, which was weird but appreciated. Even the HOA interim president, a quiet accountant named Neil who looked perpetually overwhelmed, approached me during his evening walk. We'd like to make amends, he said. There's talk of formally revising the HOA bylaws, adding more checks and balances, transparency. We want your input, maybe even a seat on the advisory committee. I nearly choked on my coffee. You want me to join the HOA? He chuckled. Not join, just watch us. Keep us honest. I told him I'd think about it. The best part, though, walking onto my land again without anyone blinking. The tape had been removed, the fence gate unlocked. It still looked a little scarred, patches of torn-up gravel, some leftover debris from Karen's pet project, but it was clean, open, and finally peaceful. I didn't rush to build. For the first time, I felt like I could take my time. One afternoon, I set up a folding chair under the pine trees with a notebook in my lap. No contractors, no permits, no battles, just me sketching out ideas. Not for a house, though, something simpler, something I never expected I'd want to build. Something for everyone. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who landscaped for peace. But there I was, 3 months after the dust had settled, laying down cedar mulch by hand, while a local nursery guy unloaded a truck full of native shrubs. The old lot didn't look like a war zone anymore. It looked like a fresh canvas. The house plan stayed in the drawer. After everything that happened, the idea of putting up walls didn't sit right with me. I didn't want a retreat. I already had one, just not in the way I'd expected. What I wanted was for this space to breathe, to grow, to mean something. So I turned it into a park, not an official one. Not some city-maintained project with rules and maintenance crews and budget debates. Just a patch of green where people could walk, sit, and not think about HOA politics. A winding gravel path, a few benches under the pines, a community board near the entrance with flyers for local events, lost pets, and garage sales. I put in the work myself, weekends with a shovel, evenings with a rake and a headlamp. A couple of neighbors joined in here and there. Stan brought a wheelbarrow. Mrs. Holloway donated some perennials from her backyard. The same teenagers who once helped troll me online offered to repaint the old bench from the trailer site. I let them under one condition: they had to carve their initials underneath, not on the top. One Saturday, I planted a sign near the path. Not flashy, just a simple wooden board with white lettering bolted into place near the main entry. This is private land, open to everyone who respects it. Unlike Karen, no one complained. Most people laughed. A few took photos. One woman told me it was the most honest thing she'd seen in Pine Valley in years. By summer, the space had a name. Not official, but it stuck. Karen's Field, people called it. Part joke, part lesson, part tribute to everything not to do when given a little bit of power. The HOA, under Neil's watch, cleaned house. They rewrote their bylaws, opened financial audits, and capped executive authority. No more blank checks. No more personal vendettas. They even published monthly spending reports, something Karen once claimed was too confusing for most residents. Karen herself didn't stick around for sentencing. She pled out, guilty to multiple counts including fraud, misuse of funds, and filing false property claims. She took a deal: 2 years probation, community service, and a fat restitution check split between the HOA and, by court order, me. Last I heard, she moved out of state. Some said Florida, others said Arizona. All I knew was her Lexus hadn't been seen in Pine Valley since the day she left the courthouse with handcuffs under her blazer. I never saw her again. And honestly, I didn't care to. What I did see, every day, was a steady stream of people walking through my little patch of peace, some with dogs, some with strollers, some just passing through on their way home. And no one asked who it belonged to. They just respected it, which in the end was all I ever wanted.